Part 1. The decade that disappeared. There's a specific kind of pain that has no wound. No escape. No moment you can point to. Just the slow, quiet realization that a decade of your life passed and you were barely present for any of it. You didn't waste it all at once. That's what makes it so dangerous. You wasted it one comfortable evening at a time. You remember who you were at 20, the hunger in your eyes, the plans you had, and then you look in the mirror at 30 and something is gone. You don't know exactly when it left. The decade didn't disappear in a crash. It dissolved in distractions, delays, and decisions you kept postponing for tomorrow. The regret isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It whispers in the gap between the man you imagined you'd be and the man you actually became. Every man carries the ghost of the version of himself he never became. Most men learn to live with that ghost. A few decide to silence it. The cruelest part? You had goals. You wrote them down. You believed in them once. And then life got loud, and you quietly stopped fighting for them. The world didn't stop for your confusion. It kept moving. And the longer you stood still, the harder it became to start. Time is the only resource that cannot be earned back. Not with money. Not with discipline. Not with regret. Once it's gone, it is simply gone. But here's what most men never hear. It's not too late to stop wasting the time you still have. The question is whether you're finally ready to listen. Part 2. The anatomy of wasted time. Wasted time doesn't always look like laziness. Sometimes it looks like staying busy, scrolling, consuming, reacting, while doing absolutely nothing that matters. The most dangerous comfort is the kind that feels productive. You're not lazy. You just keep choosing the easier version of effort. Numbing yourself is not the same as resting. You told yourself you deserve the break, but the break became the entire decade. How many times did you stand at the edge of change and walk away? Not because you couldn't, but because starting felt heavier than staying the same. Your environment will quietly set the ceiling on your life if you let it. The men around you normalized mediocrity, and you absorbed it without realizing. Track your hours for one honest week. Not what you think you do, what you actually do. Most men can't survive that exercise without breaking. The opportunities didn't disappear. You were just always slightly too distracted to grab them when they arrived. The absence of a plan is itself a plan to drift. And drifting for 10 years takes you somewhere you never would have chosen. You watch life from behind glass. Other men building, failing, rising, while you kept telling yourself your time was coming. It wasn't coming. You had to go get it. Wasted time is not a verdict. It is a diagnosis. And the first step to healing is the brutal honesty to call it what it actually is. Part 3. The moment of reckoning. For most men, the reckoning doesn't come from a book or a speech. It comes from a moment, a funeral, a birthday, a mirror at the wrong time of night, when the truth stops waiting to be acknowledged. 30 arrives differently than you expected. Not with achievement, but with questions you've been running from for years. The hardest thing a man can do is read who he promised himself he would become, and measure the distance between that promise and his present reality. The reckoning often arrives disguised as someone else's success. You clap, you smile, but something inside you breaks because you know it should have been you if only you had started sooner. Speed without direction is just an elaborate way to waste time. Some men drive fast for a decade before realizing they've been going in circles. The body keeps score. It remembers every meal you skipped at the gym, every night you chose comfort over discipline. You can ignore your goals, but your body never will. You can be connected to everything and building nothing. The reckoning is realizing that all that consuming never once made you more capable, more powerful, or more free. There's a quiet devastation in watching the life you could have built become the highlight reel of someone else's existence. Every man reaches a point where the weight of what he hasn't done finally becomes heavier than the fear of what he must now do. That moment is the reckoning. The reckoning is not the end. For the man who lets it break him open rather than simply break him, it is the only real beginning he has ever known. Part 4. The regret curve. Psychologists call it the regret curve, the predictable arc of how men experience lost time across the span of a life. Most men only discover it by living it. In your 20s, the regret curve is invisible. You believe you have infinite time, and so you spend it like a man who has never once been poor. Freely, recklessly, without record. Then the curve begins to bend. Somewhere between 28 and 35, time stops feeling infinite. You begin to feel the weight of the years already spent and the urgency of the ones remaining. The regret curve spikes when a man first measures the distance between where he is and where he intended to be. That measurement is brutal, but it is also the most honest thing he will ever do. Here is where the curve splits. One man lets the regret calcify into bitterness. The other lets it combust into fuel. The difference between those two outcomes is everything. Regret, used correctly, is not self-destruction. It is intelligence. It tells you what mattered enough to mourn, and mourning tells you what is still worth fighting for. The men buried here had plans too. Dreams, reasons to start tomorrow. And one day, tomorrow stopped arriving. The only question worth asking is, what will you do with the tomorrows you still have? The regret curve begins to reverse, not with motivation, not with inspiration, but with a single, quiet decision to stop waiting for the version of yourself that was supposed to do this years ago. You do not reclaim a decade. You cannot. But you can build the next one so deliberately, so intentionally, that the decade after that becomes unrecognizable in the best possible way. The regret curve is not your enemy. It is the map that finally shows you where you are, so that for the first time in years, you can choose where you are going. Part 5. The decision point. Every man reaches a decision point. Not once, 1,000 times. But there is one that matters more than all the rest. The one where he finally decides that his wasted years will not define his remaining ones. Before you can build the man you intend to become, you must bury the man you've been allowing yourself to be. Not with shame, with intention. The decision point is not dramatic. It rarely looks like a movie. It looks like a man, alone at a desk, writing one honest sentence about who he is going to become, and meaning it this time. Deciding to change is not the same as changing, but it is the necessary first cut. And some men spend their entire lives afraid to make even that. The decision point is only real when your body begins to move in the direction your mind has chosen. Before that, it is just another thought you had and forgot by morning. Discipline is not built in grand gestures. It is built in the 10-second decisions you make 50 times a day when no one is watching, and comfort is always one tap away. The real opponent is never external. It is the version of you that is comfortable, defended, and deeply committed to staying exactly as he is. Sometimes the decision point means walking away from environments that kept you small, not in anger, but in love for what you are still capable of becoming. There's grief in choosing growth. You are mourning the years already gone, the man you were too afraid to be, and the comfort you are choosing to leave behind. Let yourself grieve it, then move. The decision point is not the destination, it is the door. And for most men who spend a decade standing in the hallway, walking through it is the single most courageous act of their entire life. Part 6. The man you still could become. After the regret, after the reckoning, after the decision, there is a question left standing in the silence. The most dangerous and most important question a man can ask himself. Who could I still become? You're not building from zero. You are building from experience, from a decade of lessons that nearly broke you. That is not a disadvantage. In the hands of the right man, it is armor. Starting late does not mean starting behind. It means starting awake. And a man who builds with full awareness of what is at stake builds differently than a man who never felt the weight of wasted time. Every day you move when you don't feel like moving, you are rewriting the story. You are telling your nervous system, your history, and your future self that this time is different. One of the most powerful things you can do with wasted years is refuse to let the men behind you repeat them. Your hard-earned truth is worth more than any polished success story. The man you still could become is not a fantasy. He is a blueprint built from your real skills, your actual fire, and the years of suffering that gave you a depth most comfortable men will never have. Hard things done consistently will compound in your favor the same way wasted time compounded against you. Discipline is just the regret curve running in reverse. You're not just building for yourself. You're building the evidence that the men who come after you will use to decide what is possible. Your resurrection is not just personal, it is generational. The decade you wasted is not a wound you carry forever. It is the exact weight that built the calluses that will carry you through everything that comes next. Nothing was wasted if you choose to use it. 10 years gone. You cannot have them back. But the man standing in their shadow, scarred, awake, and finally moving, that man has something no comfortable person ever will. He has nothing left to fear from starting over, and everything left to build.